Thank you. I am no longer the president of the Free Market Institute. I have to point that out. I resigned about 6 months ago to be able to campaign for office full-time. So I am a full-time candidate running for state auditor. We're going to bring fiscal sanity back to this state. But I'm really pleased and I'm honored to be here with you today. It's really exhilarating to see so many of you here. And I am the former state auditor, and I can tell you that the devil often lies in the details of government policy. But we're not gathered here today simply to protest a single government policy. I think there's really far more at stake than any one piece of legislation. The devil is found, it's not found in the details of these 1,000-page bills, even if Congress actually read them. It lies really in plain sight. It's the rampant and the unrepentant rush to corporate socialism by our progressive leaders. And corporate socialism, you know, is a polite way or a politically correct way to describe the friendly form of fascism that underlies the progressive movement. We're here today because we cannot, and we must not, and we will not be intimidated by a government that rules, not by the consent of the governed, but by the whim of the powerful. And we're here today to speak truth to power. So when government absorbs major automakers and then institutes a cash for clunkers program to pump tax dollars into the auto industry, or when government forces partnerships on major financial institutions and then buys their toxic assets, or when government takes over our health care, then there's no meaningful distinction between the public and the private sector. And I have to say, you know what seniors are calling Obamacare? They're calling it a shovel-ready project. That's a good one. We really have a government today with ADD. It's an American deficit disorder. And it's spending money like a 16-year-old with a credit card and no job. The federal government has thrust upon our children and our grandchildren a multi-trillion-dollar debt, and it's a burden they're going to carry the rest of their lives. And why does the federal government do these things? I think it's for the false promise of a collective security, a promise that the government of a free people has neither the authority to make nor the ability to honor. And that's why we're gathered here today. We stand against the federal takeover of health care, and we stand against government takeover of private businesses. And we stand against government stimulus programs that drive up our debt and redistribute our wealth. And we stand against taxing and spending and restricting energy use through cap and trade policies. But first and foremost, we gather today standing proud and tall in support of our inalienable rights as Americans, individual sovereignty, private property, and the rule of law. And we stand today for the Constitution and against the progressive attitude that there is and there ought to be a government response to every perceived problem of society. You know, the attitude of progressives is that smarter than thou people in St. Paul and Washington have the knowledge and the constitutional authority to better manage our lives than we do. And I think we see the war on climate change was a perfect example of that progressive fallacy that there's a government solution to every problem. So do we really believe that a government that can't get cash for clunkers right can manage the temperature of a small planet in a large universe over a century at time within a few degrees? Cap and trade, which they're talking about bringing back this summer. It elevates the collective good over individual sovereignty and government's need for your property over your unalienable right to your property. And it shields the rule of law, all with no regard for science, which says that climate change is natural and it's related to sun cycles, and it's been going on since the birth of this planet. Nor is it a simple case of politicians over-promising and under-delivering. Because when leaders become so corrupted by power and so consumed by arrogance that they fail to recognize their ignorance. The danger to our individual liberty and our prosperity is far more significant than a few broken promises. We have leadership right now in Washington and in St. Paul that believes that there's no limit to government power, and they continue to demand more authority. And when their demands are met with resistance, they find a way to seize the power that they want. And so nothing stands against their will except the will of we, the people. And if cap and trade and the stimulus package and cash for clunkers and Obamacare and the like were just misdirected public policy, it would be bad enough. But do you remember what President Obama said when he announced his campaign? He said he was running so he could transform this nation. And that's more than just an ambitious agenda. He wants to replace our creator-endowed unalienable rights with a limited set of pseudo-rights bestowed by the government. So I say, Mr. President, read the Constitution. Now, the founders intended that the President and the Congress often stand in opposition to one another. And the Constitution gives the President veto power to restrain Congress when it passes laws that overstep bounds. And it gives Congress the power of the purse to stop presidential excess. But when Congress and the President share the common end of control over the sovereignty and the property of the people, the responsibility, again, falls to the Constitution, and the rule of law falls to we, the people. So in the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson, he recognized how difficult defense of liberty can be. And he understood that people are more disposed to suffer, he said, while evils are sufferable. And he argued that government shouldn't be challenged for light and transient causes. But then he continued and he said that when a long train of abuses pursuing one end, which is absolute despotism, it's the people's right and it's their duty, said Jefferson, to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Now, unlike the Patriots of 1776, we're not dissatisfied with our form of government. No, we're here to defend the constitutional republic that they in their wisdom gave us. We're here to defend the Republican form of government against the progressive leaders who would pervert the rule of law to transform our country for their own ends. In a global warming crisis, the financial crisis, the energy crisis, and above all, the healthcare crisis, all propose an expansion of federal and presidential authority that would astound and dismay our founding fathers. So we're here today. We're here to say no to a president and a Congress that would take over private businesses. And we're here to say no to a president and a Congress that wants to make our health care decisions for us. And we're here to say no to a president and a Congress that would use climate change as an excuse to cap our prosperity and trade away our national sovereignty. We are here today to say yes to constitutional limited government, and say yes to freedom and liberty, and to say yes to the fundamental principles of individual sovereignty, private property, and the rule of law that make America the greatest country in the world. We're here today, and they're going to see it in November. We're going to tell the progressives in Washington and St. Paul that yes, this is still the land of the free and the home of the brave. So don't tread on us. We're going to take back this country.